News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shauketaly.
And a splendid evening to you. This is Newsline Prime, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this evening, it's all about the budget, isn't it? It's all money, money. And right here in the studio is the State Minister of Finance, Mr. Eran Wickremaratne. Very good evening to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We'll get straight to the point. Your budget is out now. What would you say is the best bit of this budget, that in terms of the people's perspective? What do you think?
I think that people traditionally, basically when the budget is talked about, they think about relief. But actually budgets are really short-term, one-year plans. And I think, in a sense, I might say that there's too much focus on one-year plans. Sri Lanka has focused on one-year plans for too long. It should be in the context of a much longer period. That is why in 1960, Sri Lanka's per capita income was $144. And in 2018, Sri Lanka's per capita income is $4,300, from 144 to 4,300. On the other hand, you have a country like Singapore, which was more than $400 in 1960, but it is approximately $55,000, right? From 400 to 55,000, we went from 144 to 4,300. But this is the interesting case. Singapore is among the richest countries in the world now. But the interesting thing is Korea. Korea was $87 per capita income, as opposed to our 144. We are at 4,300 and Korea is at approximately $35,000. Right? So this is the story. And I think those countries, the lessons are, they had long-term plans. And within the long-term context, I'm sure each budget was looked at, but it was particularly moving in a direction. So we have a long-term plan. Our immediate plan is you have to start, you don't start with a white piece of paper, you start where you are. Over the 20-year period, government revenues have been dropping drastically from the highs of about 19% of GDP. At the end of 2014 was 11.5%. Very dangerously low level. Then if you take exports from the heights of 1979, right, it was about 33%. Gradually it has dropped to about 13% of GDP exports as a percentage of GDP. The same period, if you take government borrowing, foreign currency borrowing, international, concessionary borrowings are more than 99% in the year 2000, right? More than 99%. Even at the end of the war in 2008, it was about 84%. Today, it's gone down even further to below 50%. So
this is the foreign
borrowing. So you have had exports coming down and foreign currency borrowings at market rates going up, because concessionary borrowings were generally low interest, very long term, 20, 30, 40 years, and had longer grace periods. So it's in that context. So the things that you had to correct immediately, one was the budget deficit. Because the budget deficit was a few years ago 7.7% of GDP. We set a midterm target of bringing it to 3.5. We are presently at 5.3. We should have been under 5, but we are at 5.3. We had some droughts in 2017. But the direction is right. It's going in the right direction. We are going to continue with fiscal consolidation, because this is the long-term thing. We can't sacrifice that, and there's a lot of pressure in election year to sacrifice it, but we have to go down that route. The other is the primary balance. The primary balance in a country is revenue minus expenditure, right? That balance. So you take debt out of it to see what your primary balance is. Since 1954, Sri Lanka hasn't had a positive primary balance. The first time it had a positive primary balance was 2017, and in 2018 we have improved the position. It's 0.6% of GDP. In 2019 we are projecting to get it to about 1.45% in 2019. So we don't want to abandon the fiscal discipline, because I think we are building a foundation. We have to stick to it. There are political pressures. That's normal in an election year, and it's within that context that we have presented a budget, which a budget for growth, for entrepreneurship, and also taking care of those who are vulnerable in society.
Right. Now you say this is the theme of the budget, but you know right now, Eran, if you visit the people,
Yeah.
the people will tell you that they are having a tough time.
Yeah.
And you know, interest rates are high, and the people who rely on not the mainstream banking, but you know, the microfinance and forget the polymudalalis, but if you just stop right down at microfinance, even there the rates are very high, and people are having a tough time, and they're probably all collectively wondering why, because the perception was, you know, we had a war, that was fine, so all the money went there, but now what?
Yeah. So
why, when do you think the people will get a feel-good factor coming in?
yeah, so particularly because you raised the issue on microfinance,
Yeah.
there is an issue, and this issue has really affected the microfinance in the drought-stricken areas, and particularly in the areas in which we had a long-drawn conflict.
Yeah.
And most of the microfinance borrowers are women.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate the situation that they face, right, with these microfinance entities going in there. And I think I'm always a bit careful about coming into a quick conclusion. The quick conclusion is these microfinance institutions went, they lent at high rates, then they try to redeem their loan, they relent it, and so on. And there are two sides to this story. One of the issues, I think, is that it was a unique situation in which they were lending, particularly in the north and the east of the country.
Yeah.
Because this was a population that had come out of a conflict, and I think there were so many traumatic situations that the population faced, and particularly the women in those areas, because lots of them had lost their loved ones, their husbands, their sons, and so forth, and then suddenly they were trying to become self-sufficient, thinking that they can do certain economic activities, and therefore they went and borrowed. Some places maybe they needed capital more than borrowing. So I think it's a complex situation.
Yeah.
I think a detailed study needs to be done. But as government, we were very sensitive to this issue, and we have done something which is unprecedented. We don't expect to do it again. We have, in a huge effort, we have taken and written off these microfinance loans, and we have already done it. That program is in place now, and
So
we
you're
are,
basically
it's a one-off thing.
reimbursing the lenders.
Yes, it's a one-off thing that we are doing, because generally write-offs don't lead to good fiscal and financial management. But this is a one-off thing because we recognize that it's a very special situation. I agree with you on the feel-good factor, that there is a problem on the feel-good factor. I think we were not helped for sure, because we were putting this sound foundation, but as we were turning things around, we had this situation of October 26, 2018. If you look at what happened on October 26, 2018, really the damage was the political confidence disappeared. When an evaluation is done of a country, like companies are rated, countries are rated, so S&P, Fitch, Moody's ratings, we came down. We came down basically because political uncertainties. The problem is it's an economic consequence that follows. With ratings come down, your interest cost goes up. So if you take the international sovereign bond, it went up immediately by about 173 basis points up. It's now becoming more normalizing now, because it's nearly
So what
2
you're
months.
saying is it went up in that 50-day period.
It went up immediately in the 50-day period. All interest rates began to rise, including Sri Lankan securities, including rupee rates, not just the dollar rates only. But that's slowly settling. The international
But
sovereign bonds.
also, Eran, isn't it true to say that interest rates were high as well before the 50-day period started?
Yes, Faraz, it's like this. People talk about high interest rates. I think it's all a question of relativity. Because when I was a student in school, I mean, I used to hear people talking about 25%, 30% kind of interest rates. I think that may have been going into the 1970s, coming into the early 80s or whatever, right? And then there was still positive growth, because the growth was, kind of beyond inflation and these interest rates. So I think it's a relative issue. So if you are letting, basically in a market economy, there are some things that you have to predetermine. Are you going to manage it artificially? That will also have its consequences. Are you going to handle it through market forces? That also has its consequences. The question is, if you take a more long-term view, you need to be clear what are the factors you can control and what are the factors you cannot control. So interest rates are today, I could say this, is in the hands of the central bank, because the government, we don't interfere with monetary policy. We obviously have an ongoing dialogue always with the central bank.
You say that, but I'm going back to that presidential commission, I think it was, that's where it came out, where apparently we heard from the state banks, their officers turned up and under oath said that they had been asked to bid low because the rates were too high. That was the Minister of Finance at the time, his view. But yet he said, well, it was the fault of the central bank. But there's this anomaly.
Yeah, obviously, you know, that really it's a reflection on the central bank, because ministers of finance in any government, right, would want to see credit made available so that industry will grow, the economy will grow, and so forth. And when a Minister of Finance, I say to the central bank all the time, I say that, you know, rates are high, I hear complaints from industry and all, that you need to put your rates down, credit should be more freely available so that businesses can grow. I think the central bank must have the independence, and the central bank must exercise its independence in actually making those judgments and doing those things. So there may have been, I wouldn't say it, I think all finance ministers over time would have done this because this is a normal thing, but they must exercise. And I can tell you this, we've been in this office now for a year and a half, and the central bank has, to their credit, they have managed the economy, the monetary policy well. They have brought inflation down from the highs, all the trends, whether you look at CCPI, NCPI, inflation has come down. But there is a cost. The cost has come at the cost of some level of growth slowing down. And then we had this confidence issue with the political coup in October, which made it worse. Things are just settling down, and I think the process will get reversed.
Right, but the hard part to chew on this, of course, is that the political coup, as you put it, happened, what, 3 years into the government, into this new government.
Yeah.
And so, well, the question that begs to be answered is what happened in the 3 years, you know.
Yeah, I think for us to be very clear about it, I think that we had a difficult period after we took over. As I said, exports coming down, foreign currency borrowings going up, investments, heavy investments made in the last decade, which have no returns, which are still lots of white elephants hanging around, but those debts have to be paid. It's a difficult situation to manage. Looking at what we have done, particularly in the last 2 years, we have stabilized the situation. Sri Lanka could have been Asia's Greece, but it didn't go there. Actually, when Mangala Samaraveera, the finance minister, visited Washington soon after our government was restored, right, one of the things that Christine Lagarde, right, said was that Sri Lanka's performance has been stellar on the economy. So this is a matter of confidence, you see, because you could have deteriorated, you halted the deterioration. Revenues were coming down, we have reversed the trend on the revenues. Revenues are nearly 14% of GDP from 11.5%. We haven't had that success story that we can boast about, exports. But the trend has stopped. The trend is not downwards anymore. But I can't say 13 went up to 16. That's what I would like to have seen. But the export strategy is in place. In this budget, we have provided for market access, particularly emphasis on small and medium industries. Not just the big, 6 Sri Lankan companies, but tying them to exports, into the export market, into the strategy, becoming a part of a long supply chain. So that's what we have focused in this budget.
We're going in for a break now, but when we come back, I'm going to be asking the State Minister of Finance about that very same issue, exports, and about corruption. Let's see what his answers are. On that note, don't go away. This is, after all, Newsline Prime.
Newsline Prime with Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Prime. Now then, State Minister of Finance, Eran Wickremaratne, is with us. Let's ask him about exports. Now then, Mr. Eran, when you look at year on year, perhaps exports are the figures looking better than year on year. But I want to ask you, what about the bigger picture? Why aren't we really zooming into another stratosphere with our exports? You spoke about South Korea.
Yeah.
President Park at the time, when he was developing the Korean economy, he had his plan, and he and his team went right down to village level and explained to anyone who was doing anything, even the farmers, that when they produce something, they must produce it to the best quality, because they want to export, and that when this economy turns around, everyone will benefit. That was the message he took, and as we know, South Korea is a hugely successful story. How do you see that working here?
I think South Korea is a good example, and I think that for too long we have been stuck basically in our traditional export model, which is basically big companies exporting, and we started with a plantation economy, and then those companies diversified and we went into exports. I think that we've now got to the stage that the emphasis is shifting. We have to do what they did. We have to really focus on the small and on the medium. So now if you take tourism, we are going in tourism in that direction, but then you get some feedback from the more established ones that what's happening is probably not good for what they are doing. But really, we are still going down the small and medium as well. We are basically giving them incentives as well to do it. So SMEs, how do we connect them? I think that's what you said is correct. We have, on the entrepreneurship side, we have launched on Enterprise Sri Lanka. That whole thing is about making debt available at very concessionary rates to new entrepreneurs and to small entrepreneurs and medium entrepreneurs. We have also trying to basically weight the tax structure in that direction of actually engaging them. We have also putting money in how to connect small people to the export markets, because you're a small company, you don't know the markets, you don't know about country risk and so forth. So you can't just go to a bank and say, this is what I want to do. So how to link them up, right? So these are things that the Export Development Board, the chambers, the banks are focusing on. In the budget, what we did is we actually put money into these things. Then we looked also at industries, right? And we put money in industries, like we put money in solid tires, in the rubber industry. We put money because we basically want to do testing, prototyping, development of new products, and therefore we put money in.
So all this you need time for these things.
No, but this money is it'll take time to build it. It'll take time. Then Ceylon cinnamon has a branding like Ceylon tea used to have, and it's a world's best cinnamon, etc. So into testing, into basically training academy.
Because we've only got around 6 or 7 minutes left, I want to also ask you what your take is. Now, we have, in the last 4 years, for example, if we're being quite fair, the common complaint has been that although this government came in on a promise, if you like, of good governance and accountability and a level playing field for everybody, often the complaint, if you like, has been that corruption, nothing has been done. I don't say nothing quite literally, but nothing really of substance has been done. Accountability, it's the same. We see it's rather slow. But in the meantime, Eran, would you not agree that Sri Lanka needs some form of campaign financing laws, political funding laws? Because at the end of the day, it appears to me that the financing of politicians could be argued to be the biggest laundry in the country.
Yes, first thing is I would agree with you that we would have liked to see a much faster progress, particularly on the justice issues. I would say something has happened, far more than it happened in the earlier period. We have seen the judiciary, the strengthening of the judiciary, independent actions, MPs being questioned, one former member of parliament being sentenced, very high government officials being questioned, sentenced, they're on appeal. Various things have been happening, and I think it's moving in the right direction. But but I agree that it needs to speed it up. So one of the two things that we did is we said that for corruption you need to have actual special courts, because you can't go the usual way which take years and years, and these corrupt forces, both political and bureaucratic forces, will get away. So the first court was set up. There was an announcement yesterday that the second court will also begin to function beginning in March.
Political donations?
Yeah, so political donations is an issue, because Sri Lanka is one of the few countries in the Asian region which doesn't have laws on political donations and political disclosures. We need to have a law.
Isn't it very important, because in the next 9 to say 12 months we see potential 3 elections coming along?
Yeah, it is absolutely important, and therefore in October 2017, right, the cabinet approved that we should have a law on campaign financing and on political donations. That has gone to the legal draftsman's department, and I think it's very important that the legal draftsman puts this through very quickly, because as you said, we are moving more and more into elections, and it's ideal that we have this law in place before the elections, because it is important for people to declare where they are sourcing funds are being sourced from.
Indeed.
It's important to make sure that what has happened in the past will not happen in the future. For example, foreign funding of election candidates shouldn't happen.
Exactly.
This is not, it happened in Sri Lanka, but it's also, we are not sure, we are not even sure whether some of these things have happened in the United States of America.
The first line of the Political Donation Act from Singapore, the first bit says, sorry, the Act seeks to prevent foreigners from interfering in Singapore's domestic politics.
Yeah,
exactly what you say.
I completely agree, because when I saw that New York Times, I think it was article saying that Mahinda Rajapaksa's presidential campaign was foreign sponsored, it really took me by surprise. But what I'm saying is, if the law is in place, then everybody knows that that's not possible to do. So I completely agree that we can't have foreign interference in our domestic affairs. We have to manage our own affairs. But it should go much further, even local donations, because if you get very large donations, it's natural that you create an obligation between the legislator or the cabinet minister and those who have funded you. So I completely agree on these principles. There may be practical issues in getting to implementation, but I don't think that because there are practical issues that we should move away from actually putting the law in place.
Indeed.
We have other laws as well for other things. The law is in place. Maybe the compliance is not as we would like it to be, but still the law should be there, because if somebody hasn't complied, then they are in violation of the law, and at some point they will have to answer to the judiciary.
I looked through the internet yesterday, and I found that with the 2012 elections in the United States, one was able to actually look at, I think you get small donations, which is up to $200, and they class big donations as anything over $200. So even $500 is a big one, but in Sri Lanka, $500 is about 100,000 rupees. It might not be big, but it's interesting. You get the name of the donor, you get the donor's address, and if it's a company, they need to disclose the name of the company and so on. So it's very transparent, and that's very essential for our country. And do you think, when do you think this will happen? Do you think parties will have a treasury for themselves, so that the party themselves will raise money?
No, I don't think I don't think the parties could actually fund candidates to that extent. Therefore, we have to have rules about candidates funding themselves and whom they get money from. I think that's very important to put that in place. But the highest cost for us on an election campaign is actually media cost, right? Because I have been in one election, and I have also been kind of in the background on many other elections, and cost on the media is the most expensive cost. And here,
but when you have this system where the proposals to curb the area, through this delimitation process and so on, surely that brings all the costs right down. Candidates don't have to traipse right throughout a province or a district, for example.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you're only looking at a much smaller area, perhaps there's no need for media exposure and so on, unless, of course, you're in a presidential election.
For us, that argument is often used, and I am not very sure that it will completely eliminate corruption, because I think corrupt are corrupt, and the laws should be there, the rules should be there.
With the political donations or political funding laws, surely it should all come together and fuse together.
The law should be there, and corruption then could be in check. But whether we will move out of a proportional representative system is undecided, particularly at the national level. And therefore, my own gut feeling is Sri Lanka will continue with the proportional representative system because it's very much more democratic. At the local level, at local government level, we'll probably have smaller constituencies. And therefore, I would say media costs will always be there. Media costs must come down. Governments can actually contribute to it, because governments can say to candidates, right, or to political parties, they're giving you X block of time. Because the democracy is still safeguarded by that.
Indeed.
Because it's not driven then by the donor or so forth.
True.
Because democracies need to have certain rules, and the rules must be implemented. So I think everybody in a democracy has responsibility. Government has responsibility, citizen has a responsibility, media has a responsibility.
It's an all-encompassing thing. Just before we go, because we're at the end, I know, but I need to say this. Your stance, the release of your asset declaration has been welcome news, along with the others. I think another 6 of them. Total 7.
Thank you.
Brilliantly done. Now I want to know from you whether your Prime Minister, my Prime Minister, our Prime Minister is likely to do the same. I know that they've asked him to do it, and it's stuck somewhere else. What do you think?
So I mean, I can't second guess the Prime Minister. I can't second guess the President.
What would you like?
I would like Mahinda Rajapaksa to give his asset declaration.
Yes, I'd love
I
that
would
too.
like Maithripala Sirisena to give his asset declaration. I would like the UNP Prime Minister to give his asset declaration. I would like every of the 225 all to give their asset declaration. Sri Lanka must move in that direction so that it's transparent. There's nothing wrong in having wealth. It's just that all that people want to know is whether you are accumulating wealth at the cost of the public. That's what people want to know.
Brilliantly said. I couldn't have ended the show better than that. Eran Wickremaratne, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I hope that you will find some time to attend the event of all events, the mother of all events, and that is, needless to say, the Royal Thomaian. Will you be going? You have time?
I hope that I can go at least for a little while.
Good. That's all right. But, well, I mean, there's one chap who goes there every year, doesn't he? He goes and sings and so on. So, let's see. Hopefully we'll see you there as well. On that note, thank you very much for tuning in to Newsline Prime. That's the way it was here today. Take care, have a great evening, and of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shauketaly.